Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining today's recruitment spotlight session. My name is Elizabeth Hazley and I'm a school coordinator with DYW. DYW is developing the young workforce and it's Scotland's youth employment strategy to help better prepare young people for the world of work. I am delighted to be joined today by James McGeechan from MacTaggart Scott, who's going to give us some fantastic insight into the organisation and the apprenticeship position which they offer, and that all-important recruitment insight into their 4-stage recruitment spotlight. James, over to you. I believe you're going to give us a bit of an overview from the company.
Yeah, okay. So hi there, folks. Just a small introduction. So I am James McGeechan. I sort of head up the MacTaggart Scott Academy here at Loanhead, and I look after our apprenticeship programmes, our graduate business trainees, and some of our talent programmes. So in terms of a company, some of you might know MacTaggart Scott. They've been around since 1898. I look almost that old, but I haven't been around that long. But they've been here for a long while. They're based in Loanhead in Scotland. They're a privately owned organisation. We employ about 350 people at this site at Loanhead. We also have a site in Australia, and we have an office in the USA as well. Generally, we have an annual turnover of around 37 million in a year. And I would describe ourselves as specialists in innovative naval engineering solutions. We're a leading contractor to the naval defence and related marine industries. We do a wide range of systems that are supplied for both submarines and surface warships of many types and different classes, if you know anything about submarines and surface ships, really. We specialise in quite heavy duty, mission critical mechanical handling systems for operating obviously in quite extreme environments across the world. About 70% of our work is exported, and the balance between surface ship work and submarines are generally around 50% on each of those, really. So it's about a half and half, really, in terms of the workload. Surface ship equipment, just to give you an idea, we make a number of, we've done things like aircraft and weapons elevators. So if you've seen more recently the Queen Elizabeth and the Prince of Wales aircraft carriers coming out of Rosyth and across the Forth, then MacTaggart Scott actually was involved in making those elevators for both those aircraft carriers, really. We do helicopter handling kit and materials. Things called towed array. We do replenishment at sea and a number of naval deck machinery, so things like anchors and capstans, davits and cranes, just to name a few, really. In terms of the submarine equipment, so we don't make submarines here, but we make a number of parts. You'll probably see a slide that just shows the submarine here. But we have a number of parts within the submarine that we also make, from mast raising equipment, retractable bow planes, secondary propulsion systems. So they're the systems that, you know, if it happens to lose its main engines, then these are the engines that will drop down out the bottom or the side at times that will almost limp a submarine back to base, really. Retractable capstans, anchor windlasses, towed arrays systems, communications, and obviously low noise hydraulic motors and pumps. So that's a number of the things that we end up making here at MacTaggart Scott. In terms of apprenticeship, I thought we'd talk a wee bit about that programme. At the moment, currently we've got about 23 apprentices on site at various stages at the moment. So in first year, second and third. Actually, we didn't hire a number of years back there, so we have no fourth years this year. It's a 4-year apprenticeship. Currently, we're recruiting for 10 new places for this year in the fitting, our machining, painting, and electrical departments, really. And just to give you a wee insight, in that first year as an apprentice, you would do 3 days at college and you would do 2 days in the workplace. So that's probably enough really about MacTaggart Scott.
Thank you very much, James. That was a great introduction. Thank you. So I believe that MacTaggart Scott used a 4-stage recruitment process in order to hire on the very best apprenticeships. So this covers an application form, a video submission, an assessment day, and an interview. So what we're going to do throughout this call is a bit of a deep dive into each of those stages, because I know it sounds like a lot, but we're going to break them down and give you some all-important hints and tips and advice as to how you can succeed throughout each and every stage of that process. So we'll start with the application form then, James, the very first thing that the candidates are asked to do.
Yep.
Perhaps you could give us a little bit of an insight into this and maybe 5 key things that you look for in that application form from candidates.
Okay. So I think, you know, the application form is a bit of an online form. You would download that, you complete it and fill it in, and you kind of return that back and it'll come back to me basically. But I think the thing for me that's really key is about the attention to detail on the application forms. So, you know, always ensure that you proofread on them really, because realistically with spell checker and things nowadays, there really shouldn't be mistakes in spelling, albeit whether you put that English or American kind of side of things, but you know, they shouldn't be that far off. Demonstrating various skills, there are a number of areas in there that we ask you just to maybe explain a bit more about why you want the job or why you're interested in engineering, for example. That's the piece to try and fill out. I get them almost blank coming back and really doesn't tell me very much about the individual really. So tell me a wee bit about genuine interests that you have, or skills that you have, or you might be a member of teams or hockey teams or whatever it is. Tell me a wee bit more about that, because then that way I get to see how committed you may be to things, and that you can show up and, you know, you've obviously got some drive there. If you're passionate about it, tell me you're passionate about certain, you know, areas that you're interested in, or hobbies that you've got, or tell me that you've got Duke of Edinburgh awards, but make sure you've got that down in there as well. So I think those are some of the kind of things that is quite key when you send that in. I think another thing just is a real silly thing, but if you're putting either your address in or a phone number, make sure you've got a mobile number with 11 numbers on it, because if you've only typed 10, I'm not getting back to you. Right? So
that's a very good point. That's a very good point, and makes a lot of sense. Attention to detail, show that you can take your time, show that you can perform the very first stage correctly and accurately, and show that you're the best man, woman, person for the job.
Yes.
Fantastic. Thanks for that, Jane. Moving on to the second step then. So the next stage is a video submission, whereby you ask the candidate to record a video of themselves up to 10 minutes in length, answering why they should get the job, what skills and characteristics they can bring, and to describe something that they're passionate about and why. And this could be anything. It doesn't have to be submarines, it doesn't have to be engineering. As you've mentioned, it could be sports, it could be hobbies, it can be interests, it can be the environment, just to explain a little bit about something that they are genuinely passionate about.
Yes.
That's part of video submission. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at 2 very short snippets of 2 examples. And what I'd like you to do is to keep your eyes and ears open throughout the examples, and we'll do a little bit of a spot the difference afterwards. So you can tell me which submission you would prefer to receive, and perhaps why it was something more of a positive submission. So I'll share these 2 videos, and then we'll have a little discussion afterwards about which one would progress to the next stage.
I think I should get the job because I really need some money, and my mum says that I spend too much time on my phone and on social media, and I have to go do something. And I think my skills, like, I don't know, like I'm good at typing, like, I don't know how fast, but like I can type a lot quickly.
Okay, so that was our first submission. We will get onto number 2 just now.
Good afternoon. My name is Elizabeth Hazley and I am applying for the apprenticeship position within MacTaggart Scott. I believe I am the best candidate for this position because I have shown great commitment to my studies throughout my education, achieving 5 national 5s and 2 hires. I have also shown great commitment to my hobby, swimming, and have represented my school at the Scottish National Championships. Having done my research on this company and this apprenticeship, I know that it will take me 4 years to complete, and so I'm aware I will have to display the same strong level of commitment to this role in order to succeed, and I am ready for the challenge.
Okay, so there we go. That's 2 little snippets, just 30 seconds long. Obviously, we'd like to see one that was up to 10 minutes. We don't have quite enough time today. So just to get your opinion then, James, how would you compare those 2 videos and tell us a little bit about how you felt watching them?
Okay, so I think, for me, I think it's really 2 good examples, and actually, you tend to get that difference between really good videos coming in and ones that look like they've not taken too much time to do any preparation whatsoever. So I think, for me, if who would you hire really? And if you ask the class, who would you really hire? If they don't say the second one, then they're really not watching the 2 same videos really. And I think, it's very clear that, in terms of that second video, for me, there was some real passion shown. It looked like there'd been effort made. They had researched the company, there was a dress to impress. It just means that you put some effort in. And to me, that's the kind of people I want to work with. They look like they're motivated. They've presented themselves well. They've taken the time out. They've maybe used that 10 minutes rather than 30 seconds. Whereas if you look at the behaviour in the first video, it was almost, you're thinking realistically, they looked like they really needed a life support machine to shift them and get them up, realistically. And I think the mum was more interested in them getting a job than they were getting the job. And I think those are the kind of things that realistically a recruiter or an employer you're looking for. Are they really interested in it, or are the parents interested in you getting that job? And if you're really interested in, you can see that it comes across really well. But I think those, the bit of creativity with, your name coming up at the beginning and the introduction, they're all the kind of things you want to see, because you know that somebody's taking the time out to really care about, I want to be the best I can be. So I think that's the key things for me when you watch that. And for me, that would be getting the, the 15 out of 16 marks. We kind of mark it up to 16 with desire and presenting ourselves, presenting, the research in the company or the desire. Whereas the other one for me, realistically, is probably getting a 4 or a 5.
Yeah, well, that's good to know, and it's good to hear a little bit more detail about you're looking for effort, you're looking for time, you're looking for someone that's well presented, the camera's at an angle where you can actually see their face, and you're thinking about the tone of voice and what it is they're saying, and smiley faces, and hoping that ideal candidate can tick all those boxes.
Yeah, and I think just you can see the energy there.
Yeah.
Realistically, you want to work with people with energy and not somebody you're going to have to keep moving around all the time because they don't look like they have the effort to walk in their own 2 feet. And you don't need that in any industry, really. You're looking for some good people.
Absolutely. Thank you for that advice. That's really, really helpful. Thank you, James. So next we'll discuss the 3rd stage, which is the assessment day. Now, I know that can sound a little bit scary to some people, but hopefully as we go into a little bit of detail, we can put minds at ease that it's not as scary as it perhaps sounds. So I understand that the candidates are then invited into your building to complete a test, including a psychometric test. Can you tell us what a psychometric test actually is, and why you use that to test the candidates? What does it demonstrate if these candidates are able to pass that psychometric test? Okay, so
a number of things for me. We use in any industry realistically, you'll use a psychometric test really as a activity of an assessment that's conducted that in order to evaluate a candidate's maybe performance.
Yeah.
For example, it includes, but it's not limited to skills, and it could be knowledge, it could be ability. You can do personality traits or attitudes, and also then the job and academic sort of qualifications or potential. So there are generally a number of psychometric test styles and formats. The three main areas that we'll elaborate on, though, are predominantly aptitude tests, really. The behavioural and the assessment centre, we conduct an assessment centre, but within that is the aptitude test as part of that day, really. And then we take them on a tour, which allows them to ask other questions then, and we can see what interest they have when they're there. So they're generally not used in isolation. So, you know, some companies would generally use that and then make a decision. That's not really the correct way to use them. You need to make them part of the overall process to add value to things. So like the ones we have, the 4 stages, before we make final decisions, it just starts to allow us to reduce the number of candidates, really. Now, ideally, in an ideal world, you know, if 90 people apply for this job, I'd love to give 90 people the job, but we've got 10 vacancies. So realistically, you know, 80 people are not going to be successful. And that's just the reality in life. That's just the way it really is. So it allows us, if they don't get over a 60% pass mark, to eliminate a number of other candidates, really. What was I said there? So that allows us to reduce that to a more manageable number to then get to the interview stage, really. And that's why we use them, really.
Yes. And as you've mentioned, no, it's not in isolation, so it's not just about the score you get.
No.
It's everything else as well, so long as you do get that 60% pass rate, which shows, MacTaggart Scott, that you have the capabilities of carrying out the apprenticeship within the organisation. Yeah.
So I think the only way that we can assess that intelligence is by using the psychometrics. So it allows us to say whether we're going to hire you or we might not hire you, but we'll also reduce it. So, you know, numbers coming to our assessment centre next week's 28. The reality is there's probably only going to be 17 or 18 might pass.
Yes.
That 60%. So it allows us to eliminate some and then bring the rest back. That still gives them almost a 1 in 2 chance of getting a job. So it's still pretty good odds for coming in, but it's the only way that you can get things to a manageable number of people, and that's just, you know, life, really.
Of course. Yeah. And James, if someone were to have perhaps additional support needs, they might require extra time, are you in a position whereby you're able to make those adjustments for people?
Yeah, so that's actually a really great point, Elizabeth, because last year I had somebody that we who didn't pass the assessment, who, when I gave them the feedback that I hadn't passed, they said, oh, generally I get more time for exams and all the rest of it. So it's one of the things that we generally now say at the very beginning, that if people have any particular needs or need more time, then they tell us that and tell us up front. Because last year what I couldn't do then was allow them to go and re-sit now that they've got an advantage over everybody else. So absolutely, I think, you know, people get 10 minutes or 20 minutes at exam times because of, you know, whether it's a bit autistic or dyslexia or whatever kicks in, then you know what, let's make the time. But that's the other thing about interviews, be honest up front, let us know that there's a requirement for extra time on things, because it's not that we will exclude you for that at all. It's absolutely key that you let us know so we can accommodate for that. It's a really good point.
Yeah, really helpful for all our young people to know to just be honest, be upfront, and, you know, let the recruiter know that at the early stages, so that they can make the appropriate adjustments so that you can perform at your very best on the day. Yeah,
and what we don't want is anybody being embarrassed about that at all, because it's not about that. So just let us know up front and we'll accommodate that and give the time, because I think that's the right thing to do.
That's really helpful, James, thank you. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to show an example of a couple of questions that may be incorporated in a similar psychometric test, just for young people that have never seen what this might look like. It might just give you a little bit of an idea as to what that would look like on the day. So if I bring up my screen just now, so an example question may perhaps be, if the large wheel, this one here, moves in the direction shown, so that's this way, clockwise, in which direction will the small one move, this one here? So is it going to move anti-clockwise in the direction A or clockwise in the direction B? And if it's neither, if it's either, C. So that's just to give you an understanding of logic, I think logic of reasoning, and for you to be able to figure out, okay, it's moving this way, and you've got the rope, and you've got one on top, and you've got that one, etc., etc. So that you can test that sort of logic. And just another wee example here at the bottom. So similar type of question again, just scene one perhaps. When the small wheel turns in the direction shown, clockwise, the big wheel will turn either in direction A, direction B, or will it move back and forth? So that's just another example of a question that you might be asked to exemplify that logic and whether you can sort of make sense of that, which you'll probably do a better job than I will anyway. Okay, now James, if we have a candidate that has done a fantastic application form, a fantastic video submission, and they've passed with flying colours on that assessment day, we move on to the fourth and final stage, which is the interview. Hopefully the in-person interview as well, where you invite the candidate on site, they meet perhaps a panel of interviewers, which they will ask some questions, and then you have the opportunity to ask them questions as well. So I'm hopeful that you could perhaps provide us with some examples. First of all, let's go with some positive examples that you have experienced in your time of a candidate who's performed really well at that interview stage. And what was it that they said or did, or how did they act that got your ears perked up and you're thinking, oh, I'd love to work with this young person?
Yeah, so I suppose, I think the first thing is almost that slight demonstration when they arrive on site, that they're confident enough to, maybe not so much now with shaking hands, but generally shaking hands was always the kind of thing when you meet and greet people and you have a nice, good, and like a strong, healthy type of handshake. But you can kind of see the interest levels on them when they walk in. I think actually, still dressing to impress is still an important part of interviewing. I think, if you show up with a pair of baggy tracksuit trousers and, some old t-shirt type of thing, realistically, don't forget somebody's judging you. They judge you within 30 seconds. And that judgment still might be wrong in terms of, capability and aptitude to do things, but that's the first impression. It shows that you've not made an effort, really. And it's always the thing that recruiters will talk about. I always like when people are there that, generally the first question we ask is always, what can you tell us about MacTaggart Scott? Okay. Right. And realistically, you get everything. You'll know when they give you quite succinct, clear answers, when they talk about the submarines and the innovative solutions to, somebody else that will say, oh, we think you do stuff for the army and things. And I'm going, no, we don't. Yeah. And so you kind of wonder about, did you do any prep whatsoever? And that's always a bit of a no-no, really, because you're just thinking, that's not great. It's not even a good start.
You know that someone's taken the time to do a bit of research, had a look on your website, on your social medias, understand the type of organisation that they want to work with.
Yeah, and even that date for us is always a thing. The amount of people who always go, we know you're founded in 1898, and then you go, well, that's good because you've done your homework. Some of them will tell you some history about it, and that's always really nice because I'm thinking, I don't even know that history sometimes. So, it's really good when they've obviously done some real good work and, real research in that. I think, when they're sitting upright and almost leaning forward and showing a general level of keenness and energy is a really good thing. When they start to sit back and they've got no questions or they don't answer a question that you've asked them, because they can all be asked. Generally, we have a standard number of questions that we ask every candidate.
Yes. But
equally, we'll have some questions about your application form that's obviously going to be different, because either we're going to probe at something or we're going to ask you about, why did that happen or why did you leave here? And you need to be thinking about being prepared to answer some of those questions. And again, that's about the honesty and being upfront about some of that stuff. And I think some real positives when, I seen a couple of supervisors last year who absolutely get shocked when we said, have you any questions for us? And then they asked about how long have you been here and what is it you enjoy about your job? And actually, it took some of them, you know, they were like, oh, nobody's really ever asked me that before. That's great. You know, so they like to talk about their work too.
Of course. And you want to see someone that wants to be there. They're showing that enthusiasm. They're showing that I want to be there above that other 90 that have applied for the same job. And yeah, they're keen, they're enthusiastic, they've got full of energy, and they obviously do take a genuine interest by asking the panel those questions.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, because you always get the opportunity to ask, so just ask.
Yeah. Have you had any, I mean, apart from that one there about, oh, why do you enjoy your job? Have you had any other really interesting questions where you thought, oh, that's a really good question, you know, I'm impressed you've asked that?
I can't think specifically, you know, right off the bat on them, but you get some really good questions, or you get questions about, you know, the history of the family sometimes, and I'm thinking, geez, it's been 120 years, I don't know, you know, the detailed, you know, levels of it.
The family tree.
Oh, that's great. Or somebody will mention somebody that they know here, or, you know, and that's always kind of interesting. So yeah, I think in some of their hobbies, you know, when they start talking about the things they're passionate about, they can be really interesting. You know, you get young people who are playing bowls, or, you know, they've been fixing their old grandparents' tools, you know, since they passed away, because he wants to just, you know, refurbish them and still use them because they're still useful today. And you just kind of get a real sense of, actually, these youngsters are really keen, and, you know, got some great stories themselves, and sometimes you don't expect it and you get it and you just go, that's brilliant, really, really good. So yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I think, you know, as well as all of the standard tips to present well and speak slowly and be confident and eye contact and answer questions in the STAR format and things, I think it's really important, and I've gathered this from having conversations with you, James, that these young people, they show their personality, because we spend a lot of time with our colleagues, we spend a lot of time in work, and it's very important to be able to get on with your colleagues. So when recruiters are interviewing candidates, they're thinking, now, would I like this candidate to be sitting alongside me at my desk from 9 to 5 every day for the next 10 years? So it's about more than showing just your qualifications, your skills and your certificates. It's about showing that well-rounded individual that has all those passions and interests and personality traits and characteristics that's going to make them a really valuable asset to the team, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think the, you know, what you always generally like is, if, you know, every so often, once the nervousness, now don't ever be afraid to be nervous. We know you're nervous, everyone's nervous. Some of the recruiters are nervous even when they go into even recruiting, so we know that that's always there. But, you know, let us see that personality, because you get the wee snippets when they'll maybe come out with a wee funny remark, or they follow back in something, and that's when you start to see that they've relaxed just that wee bit more, and you're getting to see the real person. And actually, that's always, I think, a really good thing, because you go, yeah, they'll be all right in here, you know, because in any workplace, you know, you have good days, you don't, you know, you have bad days, you have people who will, you know, have a wee funny remark about you and stuff, and you have to give as much as you take, and, you know, and some days it's just really good, but you need people that have just got a good sense of humour, and I think that's important, because you need it every day.
Of course, we need that. So on the flip side then, perhaps, do you have any examples of real interview red flags, anything that you're a distinct no-no, or anything that a candidate has said or done, whereby you're questioning, I don't know if you are right for this position? Do you have any examples of the stuff to avoid and stay away from?
Yeah, I think, you know, not making an effort even just for dressing, coming to the interview is not always a really great thing. It's always almost a bit of a bad start. I think the other thing that's generally a bad start, if there's no excuse really, is if you're late for your interview. You know, you just go, what, you're late for the interview? And you just think, how often is your attendance going to be late in the mornings when we start at 7 o'clock in the morning? How are you going to get here when you've not managed 11 o'clock for your interview? Do you know what I mean? So that kind of thing is a bit of a red flag. So that timekeeping is a thing for me. I think not so much even at the interview stage, but back to the application form, you know, and it's about thinking about what you write. When somebody's telling me that, you know, I've been let go from my Tesco weekend jobs because of poor attendance and poor timekeeping, you know, realistically, what am I thinking as an employer? Wait, and I'll hire you to not come to my work. You know, it's just a bit of a no-no, really. Just don't, you know, because there's probably other reasons. So put that down, I would say. Yeah. So Yeah, and I think they sit in that sometimes people will sit quite lazily, so a bit like that first video.
Okay.
They will sit quite lazily back in the chairs and almost look like they're not even interested at the interview piece either. You know, and just give you the I don't know, and you think that was quite a hard interview. You know, you're getting nothing out of them, and that's not great.
Yeah.
They're kind of no-nos to me. Look, if you really don't want the job, just please don't apply.
Yeah, of course. No, that makes a lot of sense, and I'm sure that's good advice just for everyone to keep on top of and be aware of. You know, you're, as you mentioned, you're kind of being evaluated from that minute, from the very minute you step in the door, aren't you? So
Yeah.
Very best side of you as you can.
Yeah, I think you know, just one wee tip I would say that you know, in terms of the preparation for your interview, that you know, go onto websites and Google those top 30 interview questions, because actually some of those questions always get asked by every recruiter. You know, they're not there to kid on, they're there for a reason.
Yeah.
They're asked, what do you know about the company? Tell me what your skills are, what your strengths are, you know, tell me something about yourself, or you know, or when you had a bad day, how did you overcome it? Those things will crop up in those 30 questions. Have a think about them, because somebody's going to ask you them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that falls on to the point that preparation is key throughout this whole process, this whole 4 stages, and any recruitment process. You have to be prepared in order to show that very best side of you. And hopefully, what we've done throughout this recruitment spotlight is help you prepare for those stages, for that application form, for that video submission, for that assessment day, and for that interview. And James, you provided a really thorough and deep dive into each of those stages, which I think has been really valuable and really helpful, really beneficial. So, and it's transferable as well. Whilst this is a spotlight into your specific practices, you've given some really helpful hints and tips into generally how young people can better prepare themselves for this full recruitment process, which can be daunting. You know, as you've mentioned, none of us particularly like interviewing. You are under pressure, you do feel a little bit nervous, but we can all guarantee that if you put that effort in advance, if you put that time in, if you put that little bit of study in, you're going to get off on the right foot, and you're going to give yourself a bit of a step up, which is really good.
I think you know, always have a think about, you know, we have 90 applications and only 10 jobs. So if you're not successful this year, it doesn't stop you reapplying next year. So, you know, don't give up. We've got lots of people who have came in the second year and ended up becoming an apprentice, and ask for feedback's another thing. So if you don't get through, maybe ask for the feedback. And it might be very little in it. It might be that you just didn't get the 60% at the assessment day, therefore we just eliminate.
Yeah.
It's that close. And then on the interview day, it might be just somebody has just come across, you know, more succinct and have spoken or given more detailed answers at times. So that will be it. So just try and learn from that. If you decide that you want some feedback, ask for it. I think that's an important thing.
That's very good advice. I do like that. Don't be afraid then to phone up to ask, look, what did I do that I could have done better? How can I improve for my next opportunity? Where did I go wrong? Where did I go right? And all of that information and all of this information can help you build that experience. So that's a really good tip. And it's great to know that you're happy and willing to take that time to speak with candidates and to give them that chance, that opportunity, give them that feedback. And great to know that candidates reapplied perhaps the following year and been successful and they're on their apprenticeship journey with you.
Yeah.
Great to hear. Well, James, thank you. We've had a really strong insight into each of those 4 stages. Do you have any final thoughts or final comments that you'd like to add for our young people today?
Yeah, no, I think, you know, for me, honestly, just, you know, be yourself, let people see the personality, because that's really what we're all going to work with on a day-to-day basis. I think, you know, as one of these people who are becoming grey-haired and older, what I will say to you is, you know, find that job that you love and you never need to work a day in your life. Right? We'll all work a long, long while. If you're passionate about what you do and you enjoy it, the days go in way much quicker than if you feel forced to go and do something you're not really wanting to do. So, you know, give it everything you've got, and I'm sure you'll have a very enjoyable career.
A great motto to live by. Thank you, James. And thank you to all of our young people who are listening today. Please do contact us if you have any questions, any queries, anything that you'd like either of us to follow up with. I'll pop our contact details on the video, so please do send us an email, drop us a phone call, and we're more than happy to pick up with you. We're always happy to help. And all that's left for me to say is, James, thank you once again, and all the best to everyone that's watching.
Have a great career.